The news couldn't be contained. No encryption stopped it. No state censorship stifled it. Across the galaxy, from the icy rings of Europa, 9 to the bioluminescent sky reefs of Kordash, the story spread. Not as official Terran retaliation, no fleet had yet mobilized, but as rumor, as whisper, as legend. The Baba Yaga had come. Among humans, the name sparked awe and ancestral memory. Among aliens, it ignited confusion, dread, and obsession. Cultures that prided themselves on historical archives, that cataloged every known species and their myths, could find no reference to such a figure. And yet, the images spread, a cloaked being of shifting form, sometimes young, sometimes old, eyes gleaming like dying stars. A spectral force that walked unseen, striking not armies, but individuals, carefully, cruelly, and with surgical precision. At first, the Terran Union denied knowledge. Ambassador Lena Myrov had been declared dead. Autopsy, refused by the Empire. Corpse, vitrified. There was no body to bury, only a pile of fractured bones returned in a ceremonial glass case. Yet certain factions within the Union began whispering too, privately, urgently. Admiral Ronan Koss, a decorated war veteran of the Red Dagger Rebellion, was one of the first to act. In a dark chamber beneath Titan's black seas, he met with the retired agents of Terra's secret order, the Obel Circle. Spies, whisperers, those who specialized in legacy memory, resurrection phenomena, and dangerous cultural archetypes. They were feared by even their own kind. And yet he came, armed with a single question. Is it her? The woman who answered had no eyes, only sockets lined with micro-threads that shifted like sea anemones. She is not Lena, the woman said, but she was born from her. Explain. You killed a woman, the agent whispered. And in her place, an idea returned. It was enough to make even Koss tremble. He had seen monsters in space, pirates fueled by madness, and xeno-entities that devoured light. But this was something seated in cultural memory, twisted by tragedy, watered with vengeance. On the Empire's side, panic set in behind their polished facades. Imperial commanders found their homes breached, despite World Shield security. Members of the Assembly reported night terrors. Some were found muttering in ancient Terran tongues they should not have known. One minister, a blue-skinned Wartani with 8 mouths, tore open his own body in a public square, whispering, "She walks with iron teeth." Still, the Empire would not admit fear. They doubled patrols, installed psychic dampeners, reinforced diplomatic stations, all of which only served to underscore a fact even the most rational minds could not deny. Their galaxy-spanning reach meant nothing against a ghost. Then came the breach on Omnian Prime. Deep beneath the palace, where the atmosphere was thickened and the walls were carved from neutronite, a substance so dense it distorted nearby gravity, she walked. Surveillance didn't catch her entry. One moment, the Empress Vicar sat in council with her ministers. The next, a cold spread through the chamber, and all torches flickered blue. The guards moved too late. She was already there. Not fully solid. Not quite energy. Somewhere in between. The cloak of midnight. The pale hands. The gaze that burned like warm memories. You burned a daughter of Earth, she said. Now Earth sends its mother. Cyvex, the Assembly's brightest tactician, tried logic. This is theater. Propaganda. A psychic illusion designed to destabilize. He crumpled before finishing. Bones imploded as if crushed from within. No weapon fired. No sound preceded the fall. The Empress Vicar stood, not out of courage, but instinct. Regal, tall, her hands glowing with force light. You seek war. The Baba Yaga tilted her head. I do not seek. I harvest. Energy surged, bolts of plasma colliding into the specter's form, but dissipating like fog against moonlight. You violated parley, she said. Now the blood price must be paid. By whose law? By old law. Older than stars. Older than empire. The Empress Vicar screamed and vanished in a shielded escape capsule, like a fleeing shadow. The Baba Yaga did not pursue. She simply turned, passed through walls, and vanished once more. The message was delivered. Terran Black Ops intercepted the recording. Within hours, they convened. Not to stop her, but to observe. Is she ours? A strategist asked. No, said Director Leva Vash, the head of Terran Paranormal Integration. She is not ours. But she remembers what we forgot. They stared at the image on screen, her silhouette flickering over imperial marble, shadowless, eternal. "What do we do?" someone asked. Leva paused. "We mourn, and we watch." But others were not so passive. On the edges of the empire, smaller races, oppressed for centuries, began to rise. In whispers at first, then in rebellions. The Andari resistance seized 3 moons. The Krull syndicates refused their tribute. Even the Shva priest king, once a devout empire loyalist, held a funeral for Lena Myrov and lit 7 suns in her honor. Rebellion was contagious. And every time a spark caught flame, the Baba Yaga was seen, at the edge of a riot, in the shadows of a burning tower, standing upon the wreckage of imperial machines. She never spoke more than necessary. She didn't need to. Across the stars, statues appeared, never constructed, just found. Old women with iron teeth, holding stars in their palms. The empire began losing sleep. The Terran Union began regaining dignity. But no one, not even the Terrans, fully understood what had been unleashed. The news of Lenera Voss's death was not announced, not publicly. The Empire worked quickly to erase all trace of the incident. Official statements claimed she had returned to the Federation on urgent business. No witnesses, no body, no mourning, just silence. The diplomatic quarter of Thranos Prime was swept clean within hours, her quarters stripped and sealed. As far as the Empire was concerned, she had been removed from the board like a troublesome pawn. But humans are not so easily erased. Back on Earth, in the capital of New Geneva, something felt wrong. The Federation's Council of Worlds hadn't heard from Lenera in days, which was unlike her. She had always reported in regularly, always maintained communication. Her silence was thunderous. Admiral Gareth Hale, a grizzled veteran of the Orion conflicts, sat in the Strategic Operations Chamber, staring at the data feed with grim eyes. "They silenced her," he muttered. "I know it. I can feel it in my bones." "She was just a diplomat," Counselor Reyes said. "What would the Empire gain from murdering an unarmed envoy?" "Exactly," Hale replied. "Which is why it doesn't make sense, unless they were afraid of what she stood for. Afraid of what she might awaken." The Empire doubled down. After the eerie death message aboard the dignitary transport, High Command could no longer pretend the threat was isolated. They deployed the Oblivion Lance, a Dreadnought-class warship equipped with AI-aided threat detection, psychic warding fields, and elite squads of Void Paladins, soldiers genetically modified to resist mental and spiritual corruption. It was, in their eyes, the ultimate blade to cut through the shadows. Their target, the Deiros sector. But when Oblivion Lance reached Deiros 4, the moon where the first disappearances occurred, it found not ruins, but a monument. A forest. Where there had once been a barren, icy rock, now stood a biomechanical woodland. Black trees made of bone and wire, twisting upward, leaves made of reflective human dog tags. In the center stood a statue of Lenera Voss, frozen mid-step, hand extended outward as if an invitation. Her stone eyes glowed with blue flame. Around her feet, etched into the obsidian soil, were the names of every Imperial officer responsible for her death. Names that were classified, redacted, hidden, all revealed. Oblivion Lance opened fire. Every shell, every beam of energy struck the forest and was swallowed, muted, consumed as if reality itself bent inward. One by one, systems aboard the Dreadnought began to fail. Engines reversed polarity. Shields refused to raise. And then, silence. No explosion. No wreckage. The ship vanished. Every trace of it, gone. Across the Empire, terror morphed into denial. Commanders dismissed the event as a spatial rift anomaly. Scientists scrambled for rational explanations. But soldiers on the front lines knew. They began whispering new prayers, human ones. They carried charms, slivers of earth iron, old Terran scriptures, torn pieces of Lenara's last recorded speech. The myth was growing. Back in Federation space, Kyra Voss stood before the mirror of her private quarters on board the FSV Resolute Flame. She stared at her reflection, but the face looking back at her wasn't hers. It was Lenara's, not just in appearance. The mirror shimmered. Her sister's voice echoed from the glass. "Kyra, I need you to listen." Kyra stumbled back, heart racing. "You're alive?" No, Lenara's voice was colder now. Slower. as though time were thickening around her syllables. I am not what I was. But how? What are you now? I am what they made, what they unmade. I was sent to bring peace. They answered with death. And now, I am their shadow. Kyra swallowed. Then what do you want from me? To remember me. Lenara's image flickered, warped by static. Because I'm forgetting. Every day, I feel myself slipping. Where are you? I don't know anymore, came the strained reply. There are echoes in the dark. Other voices. Something ancient woke with me. I don't think it's entirely human. Kyra stared in horror. Then what are you becoming? Lenara smiled, but it wasn't a human smile. It was too still. Something they cannot kill. The mirror shattered. Thousands of light years away, the Imperial High Inquisitor Valkyr approached the Emperor with a revelation. We've made a mistake. We thought she was just a diplomat. But she was chosen. Chosen by whom? Zalathar growled. By the Veil. There was silence. No one spoke of the Veil anymore. Not since the old wars. It was the thin membrane between reality and the space beyond, the ancient unknown. A place where time folds, and where the dead whisper from cracks in eternity. A place where the universe bleeds secrets. It's not just a myth, Valkyr said. She passed through it. And something passed back. And you're telling me this now. Because I've seen her. In dreams. In static. In blood. And she's not alone. That same night, 3 Inquisitors were found dead in their quarters. Each had carved one word into their own chests before dying. Remember. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, rebel cells began to stir. Human dissidents, alien refugees, even former Imperial citizens began speaking her name as a symbol of resistance. Lenara Voss, the diplomat who dared to cross the Empire alone, who died for peace, who returned for justice. A broadcast from an unknown source began circulating across underground networks. It was her voice, filtered, distorted, but unmistakable. I was sent with words. They answered with fire. Now I return with silence. If peace is impossible, then let them learn fear. I will not kneel. I will not stop. I will not be forgotten. The twist became clear. This wasn't a human revenge story. It was a cosmic reckoning. Lenara hadn't merely been resurrected. She had been adopted by something vast, cold, and ancient. Something that didn't understand morality, but recognized injustice. A force that had slumbered until her blood hit the snow. And now, across the Empire, that force was learning, taking form, adapting her identity as a weapon. It wore her name. It echoed her voice. It remembered her death more clearly than any living soul. And it would not rest until the Empire did. Aboard the Citadel of Sovereigns, the imperial seat of power orbiting the gas giant Vigris Prime, every corridor pulsed with fear. Gone was the pomp and ceremony that once drowned its golden halls in arrogance and entitlement. Now, guards stood with twitching eyes, twitchier fingers. High Inquisitors muttered incantations from banned psionic scriptures. Generals whispered names of saints long erased by the Empire's synthetic religions. Even Emperor Zalathar, master of 100 sectors, had begun to keep one eye on the shadows. And still, the dreams came. They dreamt of ice forests and bone trees, of mirrors that bled and clocks that ticked backward. They dreamt of Lenara Voss, barefoot on the bridge of the Oblivion Lance, staring through hull and flame alike, whispering something in a language older than stars. It wasn't revenge. It was ritual. In the dead black of interstellar space, the Imperial fleet was arrayed in full strength. 9 dreadnoughts, 2 eclipse carriers, 33 destroyers, thousands of starfighters, each ship packed with augmented marines, arcana nullifying drones, psychic dampeners, and relics stolen from dead gods. Waiting. The coordinates came from nowhere. A dead frequency. 1 pulse. Vigris Prime. Midnight. And so they prepared. Across the galaxy, the last remnants of the Earth-born colonies, long silent in the shadows, received the same signal. A warning. A call to witness. On board the FSV Resolute Flame, Kyra Voss stood at the helm, her crew grim, silent, and ready. She had left diplomacy behind. Now she carried Earth's last weapon. Not a cannon. Not a virus. A truth. She's coming, Kyra said, staring at the black beyond the viewport. And they don't know what she's become. At midnight, precisely, the stars dimmed. Not in 2s or 3s, but all at once. Across the entire sector, sensors failed. Time stuttered. And then, Out of the void, she arrived. Not in a ship, not on wings, but as a silhouette, stepping from nothing into everything. She walked atop space as if it were water, her figure wrapped in a flowing cloak made of screaming code and prayer. Her eyes were no longer blue. They were voids, into which light vanished and meaning drowned. Behind her, drifting like a cord of phantoms, came spectral shapes, reflections of lost Terran legends. Soldiers who died forgotten. Ships erased from record. A titan formed of ash and bones. The ghosts of humanity's unrecorded sacrifices. The Empire's admiral barked orders. Dreadnoughts opened fire. Beams of plasma, artillery shells, warp torpedoes, all passed through her. All missed. No, not missed. They refused to touch her, curving in slow, elegant arcs, as if space itself had bent its knees. And then she raised her hand. One dreadnought imploded into a red sunburst. A second split in two as if sliced by a blade of absence. A third twisted in on itself, metal folding like wet paper, until it was no more than a cube of dense sorrow. The Empire screamed. Their might was meaningless. On the Citadel, Zalathar screamed at his warlocks to summon the Sun Seal, a relic from the pre-Empire age, said to be capable of burning gods. They activated it. The entire station bathed in a sunburst of divine fire. It didn't touch her. She stepped through it, calm, unhurried. And with every step, the Citadel forgot itself. Walls vanished, time unspooled, memories unraveled. Soldiers dropped their weapons not out of fear, but because they no longer remembered how to fight. She entered the throne chamber, and there sat Zalathar, his gold armor tarnished, his crown cracked. "I killed you," he said, voice trembling. "You killed a woman," she replied, voice a cathedral of echoes. "But not what I carried. What are you now?" She took another step. The floor beneath her iced over, splitting with veins of frost and starlight. "I am the vengeance of every unheard voice. I am the justice of the small, the crushed, the sacrificed. I am what rises when the forgotten scream." He raised a plasma sword. She raised her hand. He dropped it, whimpering. "I will not kill you," she said. "I will leave you. In this throne. In this hollow chamber of a hollow empire. You will sit and rot while your worlds forget your name." "No, please," he gasped, scrambling to his knees. She leaned close, her eyes voids, her breath like winter. "You didn't fear war. You feared a world where you were irrelevant." And with that, she turned. The Citadel collapsed behind her, not in fire, but in silence. No explosion, no drama, just a sigh, like a building made of lies finally crumbling under its own weight. Above Vigris Prime, the sky split open with light, human light. Ships bearing the old Earth banners, rebels flying the forgotten flags, humans and aliens alike watching as the impossible became memory. Kyra Voss stood on the bridge of her ship, eyes wet with awe. "Lenera," she whispered, "what have you become?" In the stars, a voice answered. Baba Yaga, a name once whispered to scare children, now whispered to terrify empires. The galaxy fell silent, not from peace, nor terror, but from awe, from the collective, stunned realization that the unstoppable machine of imperial oppression had been broken, not by fleets or uprisings or treaties, but by her. Lenera Voss, once a diplomat, once mortal, now something more. On the outer rim, in the liberated world of Tesker, 9, a child looked to the stars and asked, "Mama, is the Baba Yaga real?" The mother paused, lowered her gaze to her daughter's eyes, and whispered, "She is the reason you will grow up free." Across Vigris Prime's shattered orbit, fragments of imperial warships spun in slow, silent tribute to the force that had undone them. The Citadel of Sovereigns, once the seat of Zalathar's power, was now a frozen relic locked in temporal stasis, its sole occupant sitting still on a throne of regret, lips mumbling words no one would ever hear. Ships bearing the seal of the free sentient accord began arriving, not in conquest, but in cautious hope. A new order was needed. A new galaxy was being born from the ashes of the old. And yet, no one could find her. Lenera had vanished. No beacon, no trace, no final proclamation, just silence. Some said she'd returned to Earth, if Earth still existed. Others believed she walked the dead moons of Rechtel, healing the forgotten graves of those who fought in unwitnessed wars. A few, the most reverent, believed she was no longer confined to space or time, that she had become a story, a presence, a force woven into the fabric of the galaxy itself. Kyra Voss, seated aboard the Resolute Flame, stood before a galactic assembly weeks later. She was older now, the battle having carved invisible lines through her soul. But her voice was strong, resolute. "We stand here," she said, "not to take power, but to ensure no one ever again hoards it. The Empire fell not because it was weak, but because it was wrong. It killed my sister believing her to be a tool. She returned as something they could never comprehend. She returned as justice, wearing the face of myth." A murmur rippled through the gathered species. Mechari diplomats, Growl war ambassadors, Veskian historians, even rogue cybermonks from the Singularity frontier. All had watched the Citadel fall. All had heard the name whispered in the static between stars. "Baba Yaga. Let the Accord remember," Kyra continued, "that even the smallest voice can become a roar. That law without justice is tyranny. That peace without freedom is a cage. And let the galaxy etch this into its deepest memory. Never again shall power go unchallenged." Cheers erupted, not just from humans, but from 1,000 species who had suffered in silence. A monument was raised, not of Lenara's face, which no image could capture, but of a cloak flowing in windless space, cast in obsidian, surrounded by hollow steps. No pedestal, only a path. Anyone could walk beside it. Beneath the monument, a single line was carved in every known tongue. "She returned." She reminded us. But beyond the ceremonies and the founding of a new era, Kyra still mourned. She stood alone in the dark garden of a drifting space monastery. Her breath formed tiny clouds in the cold air as she stared at the stars, remembering. Her sister, Lenara, the laughing diplomat, the woman who once told stories of Earth's ancient myths, the Baba Yaga among them. She had lived for peace, dreamed of unity, and in the end, she had become something the galaxy would never forget. But Kyra didn't want the myth. She wanted her sister back. That night, she awoke to a strange presence. No sound, no form, just a shadow in the doorway, and a whisper, so quiet it was barely there. "Kyra." She sat up, heart pounding. "Lenara?" The air shimmered. A faint silhouette, wrapped in frost and moonlight, stood there. No footsteps, no breath, but unmistakable. "I don't have much time." Lenara's voice echoed softly. "Where are you? What happened to you?" "I crossed the threshold. I am between. I cannot return fully. Not yet. Perhaps not ever." Kyra's eyes brimmed with tears. "Why? Why come now?" "Because I had to see you one last time. To remind you of what matters. They will try to rebuild. Some will seek power again. Others will forget the price we paid. And what do I do? Remember me. Not as a myth, but as your sister." Kyra reached out, but her hand passed through the shimmer like mist. "Tell the truth," Lenara added, "even when it's dangerous. Especially then. I miss you." Lenara smiled, a faint curve of light on shadow. "I never left." And she vanished. In the days that followed, Kyra changed. She no longer wore the uniform of a commander. She dressed simply, spoke softly, and listened more than she talked. She wrote the Codex of Remembrance, a treaty and a warning. She led not as a ruler, but as a witness. The Baba Yaga was not a god. She was the result of betrayal and belief. She was the scream of a murdered diplomat echoing through time until the stars themselves bent to listen. She was the last consequence of cruelty, and she had left behind not terror, but hope. A universe shaken, a people awakened, an empire gone, and something else rising. From Tesker, 9 to the void colonies, from the crystalline peaks of Rendaris to the underground sanctuaries of New Earth, the name Baba Yaga passed not as a curse, but as a promise. They tried to erase a woman. They created a force. And in the quiet dark between galaxies, something watched. Something old. Something attentive. But that is for another story. The galaxy, once shackled by the cold grip of the Empire, now held its breath, not out of fear, but in cautious hope. It had been months since the fall of the Citadel, and though the stars still shimmered with the embers of past wars, they also bore witness to a rising new order. At the heart of this transformation stood a memory, a myth, a warning. They called her the Baba Yaga, but for many, she was still Lenara Voss, the woman the Empire had killed, and who returned. Whole worlds changed in her wake. not through conquest or diplomacy, but through reverence. Her story seeded revolutions, her vengeance ended regimes, and her silence, her eerie disappearance after the fall, became a symbol in itself. Where rulers once held statues of imperial tyrants, now they planted trees whose roots wrapped around iron wreckage. Where colonies once whispered of extermination fleets, children now played games in which the bravest always chose to be the Baba Yaga, facing down galactic bullies with a glare and a laugh. The legacy expanded far beyond what even Linera might have imagined. On Jinthros V, a council of former slave worlds gathered to form the Union of the Broken Chains. Their constitution, written in flowing script that echoed Earth's long-lost calligraphy, began with, "We are not bound by birth, blood, or stars. We are bound by the memory of one who returned." Their emblem, a black hood above a burning candle, her light in the darkness. Scholars at the Archive Nebula tried to trace Linara's final fate. They scoured data remnants, recovered drone footage, tried to triangulate her quantum signal. They found nothing except a haunting, recurring frequency in the deep band hyperspace layers, a voice repeating again and again in dozens of alien dialects. "Don't make me come back." A warning or a promise. Yet, despite these echoes, something unexpected took root. Linara's vengeance had not soured the galaxy. It inspired it. From the ashes of the old empire, thousands of micro-civilizations emerged, each striving to build something better. There were debates, struggles, even new wars, but never again with the same blind obedience to power. The myth of the Baba Yaga had stripped naked the lie that empires were eternal. In the corridors of the Singularity monks, machines once bound by cold logic began painting murals. On polished silver walls now bloomed interpretations of Linara's rage, fiery strokes of crimson and onyx, always surrounded by fragile things. Flowers, children, music. They called her the protector of the imperfect, an entity who punished not for order, but for cruelty. And in their infinite calculus, the AI monks came to a conclusion. Compassion was not a bug in organic life. It was the highest form of code. Even the Vrake, a brutal warrior species bred for conquest, spoke her name in hushed tones before battle. They carved her likeness into the blades of their war fangs, not to worship her, but to fear becoming the thing she would one day return for. "Fight with honor," they chanted before each blood rite, "or the crone of stars will drag you screaming into the void." And then came the unexpected. On the shattered remains of the citadel, a gardener found something. A seed, not planted, grown, right where Linera had stood when she erased Zalathar from time. It was crystalline, warm to the touch, pulsing with faint, irregular rhythms. It defied scans. It rejected containment. And it sang, a lullaby in no known language, yet instantly familiar to anyone who heard it. The free sentient accord kept the seed under the highest security. But some whispered it was alive, that it was her, or what remained. Others believed it was something entirely new, a gift, or a challenge. They debated endlessly, until one day it vanished. No breach, no theft, just gone. And across the galaxy, children began to dream of her, Linera Voss, not in terror, not as a ghost, but as a guide. A woman with starlight in her eyes and frost on her lips, kneeling in ancient forests, holding a lantern. "Come," she would say, in every language at once. "There's more to see." Some dismissed it as a viral meme or cultural psychosis. But others began to believe. Whispers spread, of new systems aligning without war, of fleets halting before invasion and surrendering to conscience, of a figure seen walking the rings of gas giants barefoot, cloak trailing behind her, leaving only melted metal and liberated slaves in her wake. The galaxy had no word for it, so they borrowed Earth's. Miracle. On Earth. Reborn, reclaimed, rebuilt. Historians erected a library beneath the ashes of old Paris. They named it the Yaga Archive. There, beneath holographic cherry blossoms, they recorded her story as best they could. From her early days as a diplomat to the moment she became myth. Kyra Voss, now aged, now revered, stood at the archive's dedication. "History," she said, voice trembling with weight and pride, "is not built on wars alone. It is built on those who refuse to let injustice stand." My sister was a voice silenced, and in that silence, a roar began. A little girl tugged at Kyra's robes. Is she really still out there? Kyra knelt. Do you believe in her? The girl nodded fiercely. Then yes, Kyra said. She is. Across the stars, graffiti began to appear in forbidden zones, unreachable sectors where the Empire once reigned unchallenged. A single phrase in glowing paint, always the same. She's watching. Some claimed they saw her in warp flares. Others swore comets shifted course to avoid places where injustice reigned. The galaxy had changed. Not perfectly, not fully, but forever. And in the black void where light travels slow, a fragment of something moved. A cloak trailing in dark matter currents. A hand trailing along shattered planets, brushing ash from forgotten names. Waiting, watching, not as a conqueror, not even as a savior, but as a reminder. That one woman was enough. That humanity endures. That legends, once born, never die. And as civilizations rose and fell, as alien tongues learned new songs, as children named ships not after emperors, but after diplomats, one phrase remained, etched in countless languages on every world touched by her myth. Human, don't stop.